They said it didn't fit the company image, that her hair, thick, coiled, natural, was too distracting for the office. It began with whispers, comments masked as compliments. "Wow, that's bold. You're so brave for wearing—" It like that. The kind that sound kind, until you realize they're not. Her name was Amara Fields, a top performer at her marketing firm, consistently exceeding targets, leading campaigns that won national recognition. But none of that seemed to matter the day she walked in wearing her natural hair out. Not tied, not slicked down, not straightened. Just her as she was. Authentic. It was the Monday after Juneteenth. She'd attended a cultural event over the weekend where she finally decided to embrace her natural self. Not just in private, but everywhere. "I've hidden for too long," she told herself. "If they don't see me as professional with my hair, then they don't see me at all." But the moment she stepped into that glossy glass-walled office, the temperature shifted. Her manager, Eric, raised his brows. "New look?" he asked, voice clipped. Others stared. Some smiled politely, some looked away, but no one saw her the same. By Friday, she was called into HR. "We've had some concerns," they said. "Clients might find your appearance unpolished." Her hands trembled. She'd heard these lines before, from TV, from stories, but never imagined she'd live one. They didn't fire her that day. No, they waited, gave her a warning, masked as feedback. "We encourage a more professional standard," they said. Amara walked out in silence. Her stomach burned, but her spirit rose. She went home and did what her mother taught her to do, document everything. She started a journal, logged every meeting, every comment, every shift in behavior. She saved emails, recorded, timestamps, quietly, calmly, consistently. 3 weeks later, she was fired. Not a culture fit, they said. She packed her things, said nothing, not a tear shed in that moment. But as she stepped out into the sunlight, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a bigger one. She reached out to a civil rights attorney, a woman named Desiree who'd fought similar cases. Desiree listened, nodded, asked for the documents. "This," she said, "is going to court." The lawsuit wasn't just about hair. It was about dignity. About how black women are told, silently and aloud, that who they are isn't acceptable unless altered, filtered, or muted. The company tried to settle quietly, offered her money, a lot of it. But Amara refused. "I'm not doing this for a check. I'm doing this so the next girl doesn't have to." The courtroom was packed on the first day of trial. Reporters, advocates, strangers who had read about her story. Amara stood strong, not in a power suit, but in a deep blue dress and her natural hair coiled in soft defiance. She spoke clearly, calmly, powerfully. She spoke not just for herself, but for every black girl who was told to shrink. The defense tried to twist her professionalism into rebellion. They brought up policy, image, brand, but none of it held, because the truth was clear. She was punished not for performance, but for presence. After 5 days of testimony, the jury returned. The verdict, in her favor. A collective exhale rippled through the room. Tears, from Amara, from her mother, from the rows of supporters. Justice, not just legal, but emotional. She had stood up, and the system, for once, stood with her. The story made headlines, sparked conversations, inspired legislation, a push to make hair discrimination illegal across states. Her case became a symbol, a turning point. But for Amara, the victory wasn't just about the court. It was internal. She learned that truth, when paired with discipline, is powerful. That silence can be strategy, that resilience is built in quiet moments, in journaling, in showing up, in not backing down. She began to speak at schools, mentoring young women. Your worth is not tied to how much you blend in, she told them. It's in how boldly you stand out, even when it costs you. And when she launched her own creative agency months later, every woman hired knew, you don't have to change to belong. Because Amara proved that what's natural isn't unprofessional. It's undeniable. It didn't take long before social media caught wind of her story. A tweet from her cousin sparked an avalanche. Hashtags like natural hair is professional and justice for Ava began trending. Women from across the country, Black women especially, shared their own stories. Stories of being told to straighten their curls, hide their afros, or conform to Eurocentric standards of beauty just to keep their jobs. News outlets picked up Ava's story. Morning shows invited her to speak. Civil rights attorneys reached out offering support pro bono. The groundswell became impossible to ignore. At the heart of the lawsuit was this simple yet powerful question. Can a company define professionalism in ways that exclude an entire race's natural features? The courtroom was packed the day the trial began. Ava sat beside her lawyer, her natural curls worn proudly in a soft twist-out. Across the aisle, the company's legal team looked confident. But as testimony began, the tone shifted. Former employees, many of them women of color, testified. Some cried on the stand, others held back rage. All told a similar tale of subtle punishments, of being told their hair made clients uncomfortable, of promotions denied and reputations smeared. The company's defense crumbled under the weight of their own documentation. Emails surfaced. Notes from performance reviews explicitly referencing Ava's hair as a distraction. A manager even wrote that she'd be better received with a more polished, straightened look. The final nail came when Ava's attorney played a video clip, secretly recorded on Ava's last day. It showed her manager casually telling another colleague, "I told her to fix her hair or find another job. She chose wrong." There was silence in the courtroom. The judge's ruling came days later. Ava had won. Not only did the court rule in her favor, awarding damages for wrongful termination and emotional distress, but the verdict set a powerful precedent. Appearance policies that target natural hairstyles may constitute racial discrimination. Ava walked out of that courthouse changed. She had entered as an employee fighting for her dignity and left as a voice for thousands. She didn't return to her old job. She didn't need to. She was offered a fellowship to study workplace equity. She spoke at universities, HR summits, and eventually testified in support of the Crown Act, legislation designed to protect against hair discrimination in schools and workplaces. What began as one woman's quiet act of defiance had ignited a national conversation. And Ava? She kept growing, personally, spiritually, professionally. She said the entire experience taught her three things. You don't have to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Silence is complicity. Speak up even when your voice trembles. Real. Change begins when we stop asking for permission to be who we are. Her journey wasn't just about hair. It was about visibility, authenticity, and courage. It was about standing up when it would have been easier to sit down. About trusting your voice when the world tells you to whisper. In the years that followed, Ava mentored young professionals, created resources for companies seeking to revise outdated grooming policies, and launched a foundation supporting workplace equity. She still remembered the day she was fired, but she didn't carry the bitterness, only the lesson. That sometimes life's greatest rejections are simply a redirection, leading you not away from your purpose, but straight into it. That sometimes life's greatest rejections are simply a redirection, leading you not away from your purpose, but straight into it. For Ava, the courtroom victory wasn't the end. It was the spark. In the months following the verdict, she found herself flooded with messages. Some were simple thank you notes from people who had followed her story online. Others were from individuals still caught in systems that punished them for simply being themselves. One woman wrote, "I've been relaxing my hair for 20 years just to fit in at work. Watching you walk into court with your natural hair gave me permission to stop hiding." Ava cried when she read that. She realized the fight had never just been about her job. It had always been about visibility, about what it means to show up in the world without apology. She began hosting workshops called Roots of Power. These events brought together women of color, HR professionals, corporate leaders, and legal advocates. They didn't just talk about hair, they talked about bias, microaggressions, identity, and courage. The kind of courage it takes to walk into a boardroom with your natural self intact, especially when the world keeps telling you to change. Her story reached the ears of state legislators. She was invited to testify in support of a broader version of the Crown Act. Standing before lawmakers, Ava didn't flinch. She told her story with the same clarity and strength that had carried her through her darkest days. And when the vote came down and the bill passed, Ava smiled, not for herself, but for every girl sitting in a classroom with curls the world might one day call unprofessional. In quiet moments, Ava thought about her younger self, the version of her who sat in the break room trying to blend in, who Googled acceptable hairstyles for work and straightened her curls until they broke. She whispered to that girl, "You are enough, just as you are." What Ava didn't expect was the transformation inside her. The fire that had started in court now burned with purpose. She became more mindful, more present. She eliminated distractions that once ruled her days. The need to please, the fear of rejection, the pressure to conform. She embraced stillness, meditation, reflection. She learned to listen deeply, first to herself, then to others. She had been forced out of a job, but that push gave her room to grow into something far bigger. Her story became a reminder that self-discipline isn't about rigidity, it's about commitment. Not to some external ideal, but to yourself, to showing up fully, to choosing integrity over comfort, and to doing the hard thing, not because it's easy, but because it's right. Years later, Ava stood on the TEDx stage. Her talk, titled "Professionalism Isn't a Hairstyle," was viewed by millions. She began with the same story that changed her life, but ended it with a question that challenged everyone in the audience. What part of yourself have you been told to hide just to belong? Because the truth is, when we hide, the world loses something irreplaceable: our authenticity, our presence, our truth. Ava didn't win because she had a powerful lawyer or because the media rallied behind her. She won because she stood firm in who she was, even when it cost her everything. That inner strength, that unshakable resolve, was the true victory. And what she taught the world is this: if your truth makes others uncomfortable, it's not your truth that needs changing. Ava's words echoed across boardrooms, classrooms, courtrooms, and living rooms. That final sentence from her TEDx talk was quoted on posters, shared in Instagram captions, repeated in HR training slides, and whispered by women looking at themselves in the mirror before interviews. If your truth makes others uncomfortable, it's not your truth that needs changing. But Ava knew better than anyone that living by that truth was never easy. She still remembered walking into her new job after the lawsuit. A nonprofit focused on equity and inclusion had offered her a leadership role. The people were kind. The mission was strong. But even there, even among those who claimed to understand, subtle glances at her hair, coded comments about professional presence, and representing the brand surfaced. It didn't discourage her, but it reminded her of something critical. Systems don't change just because the law does. Hearts change slower than policies, and so she stayed. Not because it was perfect, but because staying meant building something better from the inside. It meant starting again, and this time, with her whole self. As Ava stepped into a position of influence, she was no longer just reacting to discrimination. She was redesigning environments where it couldn't take root. She restructured onboarding processes. She hosted deep listening sessions with staff. She rewrote the employee handbook to center inclusion, not as a buzzword, but as a daily practice. She didn't want the next black woman with natural hair to have to win a court case to feel safe at work. She wanted her to walk in the door knowing she already belonged. Outside of work, Ava's circle began to grow. More people reached out. Black fathers who wanted to raise daughters confident in their beauty. Teachers trying to support students being bullied over their appearance. White allies asking not what they could say, but what they could do. Ava didn't claim to have all the answers, but she shared what she did know. That allyship without action is performance. That growth only happens through discomfort. That silence in the face of injustice always sides with the oppressor. Eventually, she wrote a book. Not just about her legal case, but about the inner journey, the real battle. The war between fear and authenticity, between fitting in and standing up, between hiding and healing. The title was simple: Uncovered. And on the cover, Ava appeared. No makeup, no filters, curls out, shoulders back, eyes forward. She dedicated it to everyone who was told they had to shrink in order to succeed. The book became a bestseller, not because it was flashy, but because it was honest. In a world obsessed with appearance, Ava reminded readers that the most powerful transformation begins within, and those who read it weren't the same afterward. But what Ava valued most wasn't the media praise or the interviews or even the awards. It was the quiet messages. The mother who said she finally let her child wear their afro to school. The woman in finance who wore braids to a client pitch and nailed it. The college student who decided to stop straightening her hair for graduation. The teacher who stopped enforcing hair rules rooted in Eurocentric ideals. Each message a small crack in a larger wall, each crack letting in just a little more light. Ava also learned the deeper meaning of self-discipline, not just in the fight, but in the healing. It meant saying no to opportunities that didn't align with her values. It meant sitting in silence after triggering memories. It meant doing the work in private to unlearn the shame she had absorbed for years. The shame of not being presentable, the shame of taking up too much space. The shame of being different, but shame is a lie dressed as humility, and Ava wasn't buying it anymore. As her journey unfolded, people often asked her, "How did you find the courage to sue your employer?" Her answer was always the same: "I didn't find courage. I chose it. Every single day. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward even when fear is in the room." Eventually, Ava launched a scholarship for young black women entering professional fields. Not just for academics, but for visibility, to help them afford natural hair care products, protective styling, professional photo sessions where they looked like themselves, to remind them that success does not require assimilation. She called it the Crown Fund. Years passed. Ava became a mother, and when her daughter grew old enough to ask, "Mommy, why is your hair like mine?" Ava knelt down and smiled. "Because it's beautiful," she said, "because it's powerful, and because this," she pointed to their shared curls, "is a crown you never have to take off." Her daughter smiled. A legacy was already beginning.